I am ready.
Hey,
Yeah. Don't
Hello.
don't ask me what that was. It was just it just came to me.
Are we live, Cheb?
we should be. Yes, I believe we are live.
Coming to you live in theaters.
Yes, so I think everything's working, like, should be at least. So let's just get on with it.
Right.
Today, we're going to be talking about our experiences with ghosts and the paranormal, and Rambles will probably at some point in time want to talk about Irish stuff.
Yeah, it's only because it's St. Patrick's Day and I have a very Irish upbringing. So
Oh,
Ah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, my mom's Irish. So and she always brings up Uncle Murphy
yeah. I don't
and
give much of a fuck about days or like shit like that. So I'll leave Rambles to do that side of things because I don't know anything about these like St.
the reason why
Murphy's
I want
and
to bring it up is not just because of topical advantage and wanting to take advantage of the algorithm, by bringing up St. Piet's Day, but it's also there are a fuckload of just weird undead supernatural shit that comes from Irish folklore.
mm-hmm.
Like, and a lot of it is also like brought up in like other settings as well. And those settings are like a lot. I mean, like a lot of cultures have also brought them, have pulled inspiration from Irish folklore as well. You ever hear the story of the headless horseman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in
Hang on a
in
sec
Irish
though. Do you
folklore, there's
do you mind
the
if we
legend
talk
of the
about this
Delahan.
later?
What?
Do you mind if we talk about the whole Irish thing later?
Sure, go ahead.
Cool. What I actually wanted to do first is talk about Fridge's crazy ghost experiences because Fridge has had some awesome ones. I hope
Oh
you don't
Lord.
mind.
Ah, I don't mind. This puts me on the spot, but I don't mind. I don't mind. I have had some unusual ones. Have you guys?
Uh, some. Not many. I'm not necessarily a believer in ghosts or anything, but I'm a believer in weird shit that can happen sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
the I'll start off with the two that I've had experience with. So there's this one time in my house, way back in Australia, and sometimes I'd be woken up during the night to the sensation of like someone slapping me on the face, and then I'd like feel really creeped out and weirded out until I fell back asleep again. And then another time at my grandma's house, there was just like a really weird vibe in a room, and everyone kind of just picked up on this vibe. Like it didn't matter if if it was their first time in the house, they knew nothing about it. They'd maybe mention it, like, dude, this room's a bit freaky. Like, there's something just off with that room. And yeah, so those are the two things that I've personally experienced. But anything more crazy than that, I have not experienced.
God has blessed you with only having two weird, uncanny experiences
Yeah.
in rambles.
Oh. I can't really say I've had any genuine experiences because the only experience I had were when I was from like a very young age, and they were often kind of jarring. Like the one experience I had that I thought was paranormal turned out that there was just you know I thought I saw an old woman in our attic once, but it just turned out to be a Sally doll, like one of those like clothier doll things that you use to like pin clothing on for like seamstresses stuff, like seamstress mannequin or whatever.
Ah, okay, so it was a humanoid shape in an attic or something, but it wasn't a ghost.
Well, my mom thought it would be a great idea to stick her old wedding gown on it, so it just made it even creepier.
Yeah. And how old were you at the time?
I was around 5.5, and this was in the very first house I ever lived in. Um,
Yep, that'll do it.
and this place used to be a farmhouse. There was no heating. Every winter, everyone was painfully cold. My dad would have to knock icicles out of the cupboards in the kitchen. And this place had copper wiring, so we couldn't really turn on half the lights without potentially starting a fire.
Sounds pretty safe.
Yeah. There was one experience I had when I was around 5 or 6 years old. And I think, if I recall correctly, yeah, it was either 5 and 6 or 3 and 4. Probably 3 and 4, because I was at around 6 years old. I was already living in the new house. But yeah, tangent. There was one experience where, now with a bit of context, my mom had difficulty getting me to go to sleep at night. Wasn't my fault. The beds she bought us were fucking uncomfortable. And I did not want to sleep. I did not like sleep. I thought sleep was, was bullshit. And so in order to amend for this, she would leave my door open at night in order to hear me if I was out of bed. One night, I'm just lying there, lying on the really uncomfortable mattress, and I'm facing the door. All of a sudden, I see an orb, sort of softball-sized orange orb with a line going through it, pass by my door.
Oh shit.
And I'm like, oh, that was weird. And I sort of watched it, and it passed by my door a second time. And I'm thinking, that's not my mom. My mom's not a hamburger. And it did this about 3 or 4 times, and then at one point, it just stopped in front of my door. It kind of got bigger, which I assume was just getting, coming into the room and getting closer. And then it flipped away. I can't really describe it, it vanishing, but it just sort of, like it got yanked from someplace. Like it was made of, like a plastic bag, and it got pulled out of, got ripped out of reality, so to speak.
I would hate
From
that.
that point on, I referred to it as the hamburger ghost.
And so were you, being that you were 5 or 6, were you old enough to be like, that was horrifying, what was that? Or you were just like, oh, the floaty thing happened?
I wasn't horrified. I wasn't horrified until, sometime later when my sisters were telling me, oh yeah, that house was haunted. And, at the time I probably wouldn't have believed them. But looking back at it, yeah, I guess it probably was haunted. But I wasn't scared at the time. I think I was more confused because my little brain kind of knew enough about reality to some extent that it looked at this and stared at it and realized that's not natural. Burgers don't float. They also don't flip out of reality.
So that stance is about how I felt when I had one of my earliest experiences. Like, you were on the cusp of sentience at an age to where, like, you knew what was right and what was wrong, but
reality, pretty much.
What's that?
I had a basic grasping of how reality functioned.
Right.
So that's when it defied my reality. I was like, huh. I was like, oh my god, it's creepy. I was like, huh, that's weird.
Yeah,
that's
but
weird.
You're not old enough to be totally aghast if the manifestation wasn't hostile or anything, you know?
No, because I've already had I've had more hostility from my own family than I have from a ghost. I've had night terrors that were worse than that at that point, because that, in all the stress of trying to get me to sleep when I didn't want to sleep on the uncomfortable beds, I was not sleeping and then having night terrors and having sleep paralysis and having dreams with insects and bugs and flies and all this disgusting stuff. Seeing a hamburger appear in my hallway going back and forth, it didn't disturb me in the slightest. In fact, it probably made me hungry.
A hamburger. It's so funny.
It looked like a hamburger. I don't know what the hell it was. For all I know, it could have been a UFO. It could have been a drone. Yeah. Maybe I was about to be abducted by aliens. Maybe I was abducted by aliens. I never would know.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
So, yes, Reach. You've been leading us up to this point. We have to know, what was your experience?
Well, there's excuse me. There are quite a few. A lot of them, occurred in the house where that I first lived in, and I mean, other people had unpleasant experiences there too, like friends and guests would stay and even relatives that would stay. There's a good story about that, which was like so scary because it was universally corroborated by my grandparents who were staying there at the time. So perhaps more on that later, but like it was a somewhat it was a pretty large house and it was on like a big kind of hill. Um, but it wasn't old. Like I think it was from like maybe the 70s or maybe the 70s or early 80s or something. But my mom my mom collected antiques, not like super duper ritzy antiques, but antiques enough. So she just like stuffed the whole house full of like antique furniture from the area. Um, like, you know, I'm not talking like American Pickers like 1940 Texaco sign antiques. I'm talking like 17, 1800s like, you know, furniture and stuff like that,
Oh
and
yeah,
paintings and crap.
I can
And
relate.
yeah. And so like so I attribute it maybe to that because some people believe like things carry impressions or things attach themselves to pieces and stuff. I'm just, you know, just speculating. And plus, it was on a hill, so in like, you know, they talked about that in like Western magic, you know, with druids and Celts and stuff. Like this idea, some people do that, like hills or hilly places could be like sacred sites because they like concentrate energy the same way that like a church steeple would or like a pyramid. Are you kind of like picking up what I'm throwing down with that?
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. In like some ways, you know, like people did do burial mounds.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So maybe like the all the minerals in the conical formation there, you know, and everything like generates some kind of energy field that makes, you know, creates a space where weirder shit can happen. So maybe it was that, but also there were like we were right next to like this creek, and like if you were lucky, you could find like Indian arrowheads in the creek. So
Oh,
that just like gives it an extra layer of spoops. You know what I mean? So
That's
so
really
that's the
cool.
background. Yeah, exactly. But so like I don't know, I always felt like I was on decent terms with whatever might have been in there. High side hammer, by the way. Um,
Oh,
but
did he join
um,
already?
he did join a little earlier,
Hello.
yeah.
Oh,
I
cool.
didn't want
What
to
up?
interrupt.
No,
Awesome.
you're all
Hi.
good. What up, dude? How's the day going?
It's good. I'm just my aide is currently leaving and cleaning up the last bit, so I'll be with you in a little bit.
All right.
Alrighty.
So let's see. So yeah. So but other people had like could have more spooky or negative experiences. Um, and a few times I did have something that was very upsetting and like scary. But anyway, I'll quit setting the scene and throw some concrete details down. So I remember when I was like my first one, I was like 5 years old, and it's funny because like, you know, what people so in lieu of setting the scene, I'll also say, you know, people so Rambles your hamburger thing and my stuff I'm about to say, people are always like, oh, well, we can write those off because, you know, you were young. But they started when I was young and they continued to when I was older. And then there were adults around me while I was young and while I was a teen that continued to have these experiences in the house. So I'll say that to continue to set the context, right? But I was like 5 and I remember waking up in the middle of the night. Um, and I had a very small bathroom in my room, right in the corner. It was just like a little onesie bath with like a tiny stand-up shower and a toilet and a sink, right? So I was lucky to have my own bathroom, but it had a door on it, and it wasn't a weird door. It didn't rock. It didn't open, shut by itself. And I woke up for some strange reason, and I could see in the dark, and I just kept staring at the door, and all of a sudden the door just like slowly went and just opened up by itself after I woke up.
It's creepy.
And that kind of, yeah, that kind of like wasn't fun in retrospect, but I was still even Ramble's pre-hamburger weirded out level of mind, and it didn't feel threatening. So I was just like, huh, the door opened up by itself. That was weird. And then also around that time, several times I woke up and I would just see this weird shadow like on the wall. I can't say it was humanoid, but it just wasn't a shadow that was normally produced in the room, and that happened 2 or 3 times, and I would just wake up and see that. and just try and go back to bed. But the after those things happened, the first like major thing that happened was one of the few times I've actually seen like a manifestation of something. Um, I woke up, so it was not uncommon for my siblings or parents to sometimes come in at like whatever hour. They would wake up earlier than me. I'd wake up at like 7 or whatever to go to school. They might come in and like tuck me in extra or like tuck the covers up on me or check on me and just walk out of the room. And so I knew that was like a thing, but normally like if it would happen, they would be like, "Oh, hi, no, oh, tuck, tuck," and like walk out, right? Like I knew what that looked like and felt like. I was about 6 at this time.
Yeah.
And I opened my eyes and I saw a person, and it was a woman in white, and she looked like she had a veil over her head or some kind of thing on her head. And I couldn't get a good look at her face because she just like, I didn't feel anything tucking me in. I just saw this woman like leaning over my bed that just kind of, as I opened my eyes, kind of wheeled around suddenly and like kind of floaty shooed out of the room. And I could see the white trailing and everything. And I was just like, huh, was that mom? Was that so-and-so? Was that such and such? That was weird. And I just, I just tried to go back to sleep, right? And so when I woke up about an hour and a half later, because I didn't hear any movement in the house, like normally you might hear, if that would happen, you might hear them go down later and start making breakfast. But I asked all of my family members when we were sitting there having our like bacon and cereal and shit, and no one would fess up to tucking me in. And then they tried to be like, it was a dream, maybe you had a dream. But I was like, I was up for a good 15 minutes after it happened, and like there was someone in my room and it wasn't one of my family members.
That would have been kind of creepy.
It is creepy, yeah.
Like,
It's
So-
really creepy.
it's like real people are more terrifying than abstract horrors. So.
Mm-hmm.
I got
Definitely creepy.
I got a question for you. So what is your inclination regarding like whether you think this was paranormal or whether you think it was like, what are the chances that there was like a person in your house, like a random bum or something off the street just wandered in and decided to tuck you in? Like, are there any rational explanations before we go into like, yeah, that was definitely a ghost or whatever?
Right. So yeah, so I tried to give a response preemptively to one, which would be like, you know, which would be like Sidehammer, I'm sorry, would you mind muting? Would that be possible? There's
Sorry
like
about
some
that.
kind of shifting, shuffling. That's okay, no problem, no problem. But one possible would be like, I was so young, oh, I made it up or whatever. Like people always say that about the kids. So I don't buy that because I was like a pretty darn with it 6-year-old. Number two is, oh, was it a dream? I already had an extremely vivid relationship with my dreams at that age and was dreaming in color and full-blown everything. So it was like very easy. My dreams have always been important to me. So it's easy for me to tell the difference. But plus, I laid in the bed for like what felt like a good 15 minutes. I looked around, I saw the clock, I saw that it was 5, 6 something. Like I was awake, right? Was it a hypnagogic hallucination that I had as I woke up? You know, you could ask that. We can't answer. Yeah, we can't answer any of those because we don't have the data. But as for yours, Cheb, like now we're moving into the physical space of explanations.
Yeah.
I would say no. Like we lived in a somewhat like we weren't like in a row house on the street in some city or whatever, you know? We were like up on a hill in some rural area and like in a small place, and like it wasn't the type of thing like drifters and vagrants just might come in your window when they smell the apple pie. So plus we had a security alarm system and we had good locks on our doors, and like it just wasn't, yeah. So I would say no to that.
Yeah, I kind of believe you because, like, I can't, like, as you said, you were moving around, right? Like, you were able to sort of move when this thing was suddenly in your room and just, like,
Oh
wandered
yeah, yeah, and I had then or later in life I have no history of sleep paralysis.
Plus, you could move,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't have been sleep paralysis, right?
Right. Yeah. I like opened my eyes and turned toward the thingy, and then sat there scooting around in
Yeah.
my bed after it was gone.
Well, I didn't have a ghost story, but I did live near vagrants, and out there at night when one of our neighbors uh, uh, picked me up off the ground and held me high above off the ground. I freaked out and fought and scrambled away and ran inside. Told my parents about it, and that was freaky. That was scary, but
Sounds
wasn't
scary.
Okay.
yeah.
He just
So like,
scooped you up and just lifted you up.
I was
I
like,
think it was a woman. I
oh,
was
that's
I was
adorable
like
boy.
5. I was like 5. It was dark out. I was playing in the garden of my parents' friend's house, and so we had this like we lived on this kind of hilly street. So this was one lane of the street, but at the top of at the very top of the street, you turned left. It was my house, but if you went going further up, there it would open up into this parking lot for this apartment complex, and they're owners of them, and off to the right, and that apartment complex, I guess, was leased out to the crazies at the time. It was low income and stuff, and uh, yeah, one of those people uh, snatched me up in front of my house. I freaked out and ran inside and told my dad about it. And someone picked me up.
Yeah, that's
Tried
creepy.
to grab
Damn,
me.
dude.
So I've been to that end of the spectrum, but not the spooky spectrum.
You were harassed by by a physical ghost.
Yeah.
Human beings are definitely more terrifying, but yeah.
Strange desires.
Anyway.
So yes.
Yeah, so moving on, now that we've gotten on that tangent, do you want to get to Bigfoot? You want to get to
Oh, I thought
the cryptids?
we
yeah.
were still like just barely grazing the surface and Fridge's awesome stories. Or am I wrong?
Oh yeah, we're barely we're barely basing the
Yeah.
surface. Yeah.
Oh, really? I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, there's just more jacked up stuff. Like yeah, so that happened. My cats. So I had 3 cats I got when I was 10. I found them in the woods. I had been a very cat obsessed boy.
Can I
And
ask something
yes,
before you
sir.
get in?
Absolutely.
Don't take this the wrong way at all. But what was your home situation like? I mean,
It was good. It was good. It was harmonious. I mean,
no,
you know,
I didn't really mean
well-
I mean that's good. I'm glad about that. What I meant is like, what were the temperaments of your parents? Were they religious? Did they happen to believe certain things? Could they, were they the type of people maybe you get scammed these days or something?
right. Good question. Yeah, because I don't know if you're familiar with this idea. I don't know what the statistic is, but I have heard that like when people that say their house is haunted by a demon, for example, tends to be much more likely to be like very strongly religious people. So it's like you can look at like correlations between what's going on with people and what they believe versus what events they claim are manifesting.
Sure.
We weren't religious. My mom was Catholic, but like lapsed Catholic, if you know what that means, just like Catholic,
Sure.
virtually in name only, still believe in God, go to church sometimes, whatever. My dad was not religious, so we were pretty much just like neutral, generally believe in God, try and be a good person, middle class white Americans, and yeah,
Were they liable to give out loans to friends, offer chances to people that maybe ought not have needed it, or ought not have
what do you
given it to them?
wait? What do you mean? Like, I don't
I'm
understand.
asking. Ultimately, I'm kind of asking if they were gullible at all and they believed certain stories, and then if you had kind of just picked up this from osmosis, or
Right.
it was easier to accept the idea of maybe a ghost if they weren't as skeptical as possible.
Right, right. Well, my dad is I would say is the skeptical type, but not like actively skeptic, more like materialist, focused on his job, doesn't care type person. You know, he was in the medical profession and he was also in the army, and he was just kind of, I wouldn't say rough and tumble at all, but just like kind of like a okay, what now, like type of personality. And my mother is, she was a language teacher, very talkative, emotional, and she does like, she is like someone who wants to believe in ghosts and things like that. We always used to watch unsolved mysteries and conjecture about stuff. But so she has that type of what you might call interested in the unexplained type personality. I wouldn't say either of them are gullible, but but my mother and I did very much over time share in our like what's going on with these things. But I would not say that it was such a regular subject that I was like getting programmed, as these like experiences kind of just continued of their own accord, and other people were affected by them too, like friends and people that stayed in the house. So I guess that would be my answer to that. I wouldn't say we were like, like the people that go to a seminar to learn how to make hey, I can teach you how to get your money to make money for you. You want to generate a six-figure income in under 6 weeks? I can do that. Like, we were like the stable middle class people, I would say, not really like
Was
having
your
those type of issues.
was that one of the main things how you related with your mother, or was that just a side thing?
I would say it was a part of our bond, because we both like grew an interest in the unexplained. But I mean, I had a lot of other interests too. We would read a lot together. We would read classics. We would read mythology.
Sure.
But we've always like, she had experiences growing up of her own that were interesting, and we just generally believed in life after death in general and stuff like that. So
So it's possible there would have been like a negative connotation to stopping to believe this or not believing this. You might have your relationship with your mother might have been damaged if you had gone cold turkey and said this is just stupid mom, not real.
I don't know that I would say that, because it's just kind of so incidental. Like, it's such a small fraction of like that wasn't really like a factor. Like, there wasn't real. I see the scenario you're trying to set up, but there
Yeah,
wasn't
I'm
like
just-
every other day we would talk about, oh, the ghosts, our house is haunted. Like, these things would just kind of happen. It wasn't like,
So it wasn't a big part. Okay. I was just curious.
no, yeah, no problem. But it wasn't like, I see what you're going for, but it wasn't like
Yeah,
it
and
just wasn't. It wasn't like uh, if you had a family of faith and one day you were like, I don't believe in Jesus again, Mom, and be like, oh, what was that thing? Oh, weird. Okay, you're like, yeah. So it wasn't enough of a slice of the pie that I would say would cause some kind of rift.
I know I'm supposed. Cheb told me I was supposed to be the skeptic here.
Yeah, absolutely,
See.
absolutely.
See some stuff, but and I don't want to like. Obviously, this is about sharing your interesting stories, and I don't want to be like the one guy who's just sitting on
No,
everything.
that's
No, just
that's totally fine. I'm not threatened by the questions at all. Don't
Okay.
worry about it.
but,
Yeah.
I am doing the. I will be doing my devil's advocate. That will be the devil's advocate.
I
The extent of
approve.
my devil's advocate.
I approve of this stance.
So I got a question
Well,
about.
please.
So basically, my thought process with these various things is like, the first thing you do is you rule out all the rational kind of explanations, right? Like, could it be sleep paralysis? Could it be this? Could it be that? Was I on shrooms that day? All that type of thing. Like, could it have been like a random person in the house or whatever? And then at some point you get to this point where it can't really be explained by anything but the paranormal. And then you enter this weird territory where it's like, you couldn't really reproduce this kind of thing in like any kind of scientific setting. Like, you can't just hang out one night and be like, oh, I'm gonna catch the ghost again, because generally speaking you never catch it because it never comes up again. And maybe you've said to someone like, hey, hang out with me tonight, let's catch this thing, but of course it doesn't happen when there's any witnesses, all this kind of weird stuff. And then it gets to the point where it's like, what the hell is actually going on? And you get to this point where it can only be paranormal, right? But at the same time, there's so much doubt and confusion over it because it's like not something you can easily reproduce, and it doesn't happen when you want it to, and you start doubting yourself, like, man, maybe I really just imagined it, but then maybe it happens again. And that's kind of like where I end up with this stuff, is this really weird gray area where I almost don't know if it actually happened or not, or if I was like reading too much into it, or like, for example, with my grandma's house. I wonder what would happen if I went there today, if I'd experienced that kind of thing again, or if it was just like me as a little kid freaking myself out. But then at the same time, like, other people also felt freaked out in that room, and it had like such a weird feeling to it. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I guess
I see what you're trying to say, because once you jump over the bar, then it's like, well, what the hell is happening and why is it happening? And you get into really weird territory when you have those, like, yeah, like you said, other people experience the same feeling in the room. I can tell you a story that was like multi-level corroborated, like that. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah,
Have you guys heard of infrasound doing stuff like that?
Of what?
Infrasound?
Like when people take those little voice recorders and like see stuff you didn't hear, or is that something
no.
else?
So
It's
infrasound
a
is,
frequency. Yeah.
yeah, it's a very deep frequency. It's underneath our hearing. They've done tests before, and I don't know if I'm talking out my ass right now. I'm remembering stuff before, but they hypothesized that a steady enough infrasound can lead to stress and adverse, health effects that can happen to anybody. And sometimes it comes off of like, anything like looks like an amplifier or an auditorium, something directed towards an area. That's a steady thing. Cars going over, overpass or something that consistently creates a frequency of whoop, 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 that can
Right.
actually play with your head. Have you guys ever heard any of that stuff?
I've
The
heard of
so-called Satan's dubstep, as it were.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Like they talked about those spy weapons, like ELF, extremely low frequencies. But yeah,
Sure.
they said that those can like mess with people and cause, psychological disturbance.
Okay, that's just another one of those, odd, another one of those possibilities that's out there. That even
Yeah,
with,
absolutely.
even with multiple, people corroborating, I mean, there's always mass hysteria as well.
Yeah, I mean, if something's altering your sensorium, yeah.
Yeah. For me, everything that has been like paranormal like that in my life has been in such a gray area where I almost doubt that anything even happened. Like, there's nothing concrete I can say. It was definitely that, unfortunately. That's why I'm so interested in your stories, because your ones seem a lot more like concrete than what I've
Yeah.
experienced.
I gotcha. I'll throw you another one. Before I say that, I was gonna say a bit ago, I'll do this quickly, like just another little stage setting, like my cats. I had 3 cats, they were always freaked the hell out. Like, not all the time, but the most anxious one was just very upset in the house. And it was not uncommon for them to like see things in the same places and like tweak out and like follow the things or run from the specific things. And like in my kitchen, like so the living room was next to the kitchen, and I would have like little cat petting sessions with the cats on this blue couch that like the back of it faced into the kitchen. And so like this happened multiple times, that the one cat would like during the petting session every once in a while it would see something in the kitchen that wasn't there, and it would like go from being like playful, loving, and docile and so happy to putting its paws up on the back of the couch and while like trying to peek its head up and down like a meerkat, like look, get down, and then it would bush up and its tail would get all fluffy and it'd be like and start
Damn.
screaming at something that wasn't there in the kitchen. It was
Wow.
just freak me
To be
the
fair,
fuck
that's
out.
just cats. Cats are stupid.
Yeah, if you say so, but it was
Just
very
fucking-
it was very upsetting, and the other things like that happened other places. They would just freak it out at stuff that wasn't there, and then when we moved, it all just stopped, and the one cat's personality totally changed. It was so weird. But moving on from that, there was this one night, right? So my grandparents were staying in the house, and my grandparents were not goofy people. Like the one, my grandfather was like pretty decorated from serving in the Navy in World War II, very level-headed, pragmatic, balanced type guy. My grandmother was too. She's very staunch. She was a nurse. Um, People that did everything right, balanced their finances, like typical post-World War II, like strong second, third generation immigrant grandparents, right? Anyway, they were staying at our house in this guest room, which had all these effed up antiques in it that people always regarded as being like super spoopy. But it was our, yeah, it was our guest room.
Can I
And so,
Can
what's
I
that? Go ahead,
interrupt
please.
1 second?
Sure.
That's another thing in my life. If I enter a thrift store, right, all that old stuff, it gives me the creeps. I get a bad vibe in all of those places for some reason. And I don't like secondhand stuff that much for that reason. Like, I'd never take home something from one of those stores because of this weird
Conversely, I
vibe.
love antiques.
Yeah.
I
See?
love old stuff. Things with history and stuff like that, I adore it. That's weird. I've never said.
Anyway,
It's an
sorry,
interesting perspective.
sorry to interrupt you there. I just wanted to point that out before I forget about it because it's kind of interesting talking point attention. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel both ways. You know, I've grown up around like older things, and I love the history of it and the feeling. And too, sometimes, Cheb, you just like pick up vibes on stuff, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I can see both. Yeah. But
Mm.
so my grandparents were staying in the house, and apparently my grandfather snored, so much so that sometimes my grandmother would need to go and sleep in a different room, right?
Damn.
And yeah, and so this particular night, he had been snoring, and she had gone to sleep in a different room that was like halfway across the house in another segment or whatever. And then the main part of the house was this kind of big open area, um, two-story big open area, and we were eating breakfast again at the same place I interrogated everyone about the spoopy white silvery veil-y lady. And my grandfather starts into this thing, and he was like, "What was going on last night? What was going on?" and and he never started into anything like that, you know. And so we're listening. And we're like, what, Grandpa? And he's all like, God, Jesus, Edith, in the middle of the night, you're just calling out, Johnny, Johnny. This voice is just calling out, Johnny. What were you doing? And we're all like downplaying it, and it was so funny. It's so funny sometimes when something weird happens, how rapidly people try to find an explanation and like poo-poo it.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, with his character and demeanor, we had never taken the approach of like, oh, you silly old man, you're losing your senses. But like everybody started being like, oh, you were just this, you were just that, oh, you're misremembering, oh, Grandpa, which I thought was really odd because we never looked at him that way. Like I'm just looking at the psychological dynamics of like people didn't want to believe it, but it was interesting to me how quickly everyone had an agenda to not believe it, you know, because we didn't think of him that way. So, so he's saying, no, no, no. In the middle of the night, I woke up, and I was woken up by this voice, this woman's voice, who I think was you, Edith, ringing out to the middle of the house, like wailing and calling out, Johnny, Johnny, which was his name. And so then we poo-poo it, and then I noticed that, like, my grandmother hasn't said anything at all, and she has this really fucked up, disturbed expression on her face.
Oh, damn.
And we're like, Grandma, what, is something wrong? And she just paused, and she was like, no, no. I woke up in the middle of the night in the other room, and I heard it calling out too. And we all just froze in this terrible wave of cold feeling just washed over all of us. And we just kind of moved on from it.
Damn.
Yeah, so you have like two staunch, rational, just balanced characters. and then you have two separate experiences, and you have why is it saying his name, and just it was just fucked up. It was just not a fun morning.
Yeah. Now, the skeptic would be all like, oh man, there's no way that could be true, blah, 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 blah. But I tend to believe that something actually happened there. But I couldn't tell you what it is.
Right, and there's a million things you could say like to a like from a skeptic's perspective, but what remains interesting is that weird jacked up experiences like this just continued. And so what I'm saying here is you can throw anything you want at it, but it's interesting that there were continued repeated data points, right? Whether
Yeah.
you say it's flawed data or not, there's just data after data that just piled up while we lived in the house. And like then when I moved to some prefab that was like 2 years old in the development, like nothing happened again. And it was so weird when I moved because I thought that life just had that typical character of having jacked up things just happen that you couldn't explain. And then when I moved, like my cats were like temperamentally normal. Nothing ever woke me up. I never saw anything. Nobody that stayed. Like people would stay, and like I had a babysitter that stayed one time, and in the middle of the week, she was staying in that guest room too. She was just said to me like in this mean, weird voice. She's like, you know, this is a spooky old house. And I was like, what happened? And she wouldn't fucking tell me anything. She's like, nothing. I don't want to talk about it. It's just spooky, okay? It's spooky, and I don't like it. And I'm like, what? She's telling me this, and I'm like 11. This is very inappropriate. She's just losing her shit. And she wouldn't babysit for us again after my parents came back, and she wouldn't say why. But
Wow.
yeah,
Man, I wish I knew why. So,
yeah, me too.
what's the skeptic say on this? Sideham, what do you say about these things?
You know, corroborated by family. I don't know. like I have even less data than he does.
Yeah.
You know.
But-
It's easy to say that it was just group hysteria,
I mean,
but like,
Yeah.
I could think of things. I mean, I could think of ideas. I'm a writer. I think of ideas, you know, but doesn't mean I'm any closer to being right than he is.
Oh, no. I just made like...
Yeah, I mean, it could be some mysterious, unexplained thing, you know, magnetic or electromagnetic or sound frequency that was causing disruption in everyone's sensorium that was manifesting in that particular locale, in that particular grounds and building, and we don't know what the phenomenon is yet, you know what I mean? Like, I'm totally open to it being anything like that, as opposed to, like, dead souls are populating the vicinity and, you know what I mean? It's just...
Could have been someone outside making noise. They both heard the same thing. Both
Could
thought
be.
it was them, someone yelling at them.
Could be.
Cat.
it
No.
could have been ergot.
Yeah, ergot poisoning in the bread.
Yeah,
Saw
he
the
just,
devil
you
in
know,
so-and-so.
you had some ergot infestation just from some black mold in the basement. It
Could have been
infected
something you ate.
all your bread and all your grains and all your pancake mix. Because most grandparents don't like close the box or put it in a separate container. At least mine never did. So the box is just open in the cupboard or on the counter, and they all just the ergot gets in it, and the next time you have pancakes, you're seeing Jesus or Elvis coming out of your bathroom mirror, or
But-
Lorena Bobbitt coming out of your toilet.
Here's the
Yeah.
thing, though. My counter to that is like, if that was the case, why did they all have the same hallucination or whatever?
Good question.
That's always my
Maybe
counter to the
combination
hallucination theory.
Because there's
They
been a
couldn't have
study
heard the
that's
same
been
thing?
shown, though.
They couldn't have been heard the same. They couldn't have heard the same thing and have been suggested psychologically the same thing.
Sort of suggestion
Yeah, I guess.
scenario.
You know, I mean, there. Obviously, I have no possible way of solving or telling you what it was, but there are possibilities that it could have been just hearing something. You know, they're older people who might not have complete control of their faculties. You know, it's odd that, or maybe grandma just wanted to fuck with y'all and just agreed with them.
true.
I mean, there are a lot of reasons that it could have happened. I'm not saying this way, but
Yeah,
I
we
would.
had
My
sure.
grandma would have fucked with somebody.
We I'm just remembering other little things that happened because it's been so long since I've told some of these. I told you earlier, Cheb, I could tell it again here, but maybe you know how my mom and I were sharing that same dream about the second basement and we didn't know it for years.
Oh yeah, that's a
We've been
fascinating one. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been sharing a dream, but before that, like I just remembered when we when we left and we had the house up on the market for sale, like we had a neighbor that we had that would go over there. We just wanted her to periodically check the grounds, like she was our good friend and our neighbor, and she would just go like walk the grounds and like several times like shit happened like like she she was there walking the grounds and saw a fucking man like standing just like a man just standing in my parents' bedroom in the window just staring at her and he didn't move like you would think if it were like a criminal or whatever like he would have done something secretive but this man was just standing and staring at her with this disquieting expression. She's like ah like it's like, what the hell? Because it was all locked and the security alarm was up. We had a very sophisticated one. And then it hadn't gone off. But, like, she reported it and, like, they went in and, like, cased the house and found nobody there. And it didn't get triggered in someone coming out of it. And then another time she was around and the system went off and they cased it again and there was no one in the house. It's just
Yeah.
weird shit like that, yeah.
Something just occurred to me, and it's something I've always found really interesting. But I really like to listen to trip stories and like just stories about people and whatever, like on drugs, just like what they experience. But
The trip?
yeah, I went down a
I saw
rabbit
Buddha
hole.
once.
I went down a rabbit hole once about Datura, and
Oh,
basi-
yeah. Fucked up.
basically, yeah. With the interesting thing about this substance is that people will have usually a very bad trip, but if they do it together, then they tend to have the same hallucinations. So a common one is that people will pass an imaginary cigarette between each other, and I found that fascinating because it kind of breaks the counter argument of like, well, wouldn't they have had like different hallucinations if it was a hallucination? For example, there's this one case of these kids get arrested by police and they smoke datura or whatever, like that's why they were arrested, and they were passing the imaginary cigarette. And I find that fascinating because if it's the case, then it means that like joint hallucinations can happen. So that would, in theory, explain the case of grandma and grandpa hearing the same voice and it being a hallucination like it could have been. But then that raises even more weird questions like how the hell is a joint hallucination even possible? But
Yeah, I don't understand how it is. I think that's super duper interesting, and I think to the extent that that does happen, my personal opinion is that like when we have social bonds or whatever, like we're probably communicating in some way unconsciously on so many other levels and picking up cues or whatever than we can even consciously understand. You know what I mean? And so maybe like when you take the drug, I don't know. It's like I'm I mean something kind of like mind merging or maybe like a part of our consciousness or maybe there's an energy field or something, but maybe there are like unseen mechanisms of communication that help us sustain a shared coherent reality, whether socially or otherwise, you know? And maybe when you're on these drugs, like that kind of like we can kind of see that more concretely, maybe something like that. Or at least I think it would be cool if that were true.
yeah.
And I have to wonder about brainwaves. If I was, if you were to ask me, just spitball without looking up anything, I would think something about. I would wonder about like synced up brainwaves or something if that had anything to do with anything. And
Right.
then I would go look it up, and
Has
then
anything
I
to
would go look it up and be like, oh no, I'm just a dumbass. But there
Yeah,
are
something
little.
like that. My friend and I both saw a horrible experience I had, which was not in that house. My friend and I, my best friend at the time, and I both saw a shadow person in the
Oh.
same place in a room, and we quote unquote hallucinated that together, and we saw the same thing in the same place. And it was awful. We couldn't even talk. We just looked back at each other with this horrible feeling of primal fear, and we couldn't talk. And after about 20 seconds of just staring at each other, we both just simultaneously started like incoherently gibbering. And like once we started forming speech, did you see it? Did you the thing? Did it right over there? Like it was a horrible fucking experience. It was awful. But we both saw the same thing, like a 7 foot tall, like they say, like those stupid stories. And then I started reading. I'm like, oh man, I saw one of those things that people are talking about now. It's like, yeah, it was like a 7 foot tall ish, like an Enderman in Minecraft, but like without a face, like just a big shadow thing that gave us this horrible, crippling feeling of primal fear. Like I've had other ghosty things, and it's like, ooh, the hair stands up on your neck. No, no, no. But this was just like, huh? It was an awful animal fear, and we both experienced the same thing. And so I don't know what that's about, but that's my shared hallucination story.
Yeah. Honestly, I think none of this is neurological from what I can see. And I think this is all potentially based on reading body language. Now, when you say you had the shared hallucination with your friend there, could you see your friend? Could
Yeah,
you
we
look
were.
at body language before you could see the shadow person? You know,
I don't know if I
body
could
language
describe
works?
in that level of detail, but we were sitting in a kitchen, like a dining room table across from each other, like chilling. And then in the living room to our left had an open archway behind it where there was a little daybed sleeper thing, sunroom thing. So 2 rooms away, we saw that to our left while sitting across from each other, talking and hanging out at the dining room table. So I mean,
Alright.
we've been chilling. So yeah, so our body language is the cues are being perceived, like prior to seeing the manifestation. Yeah.
Yeah, so like and during the event you could read their behavior. Could it possibly you were just like he was reading your behavior and reacting to what you were seeing, or you know, because you can't actually prove whether or not he saw the same thing you did and then like I'm not going to try to discredit anything. I'm just trying to find a logical explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was just curious because it was a totally normal mood, you know? It was like a totally normal mood. We were just talking about like BS and games and kidding around and doing what we did. And then all of a sudden, just this completely stark contrast, horrible experience just happened. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why, you know? We had never had conversations about with things like that, but yeah.
Yeah. See, have you seen that video of those two little girls that get scared by a ghost? It starts off with one of the little girls seeing something in like a laundry room behind her friend, and the friend doesn't see anything at first, and she starts making fun of her friend for getting scared, and then until like when she turns around again, looks behind her, and then suddenly she screams, and then the other little girl gets scared as well, and they both just end up sitting in their mom's lap for like the rest of the video, and it's so interesting to me. And like I'm looking at it, I'm trying to read the behavior, like maybe the other little girl who was
Yeah, if they're
in front of her
subcommunicating
was
something.
legitimately trying to scare her, or maybe it was. But even then, that little girl's gonna be an actor someday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've not seen
if
that
it's
video.
fake.
Do
Yeah.
you
But you're saying they're like suggesting things to one another and like
Yeah,
creating a shared reality.
do you guys know
yeah,
about
they're
Occam?
influencing the other through the power of suggestion.
You guys know about Occam's razor and all that, right? Like, the
Yes.
simplest
Yeah.
explanation is generally the best one. I feel that sometimes with these skeptic things, it's like, at some point, the sort of explaining it away starts to do this crazy backflipping thing where it's it's a lot easier to think like, okay, maybe these two people actually did see the damn shadow person. Like, maybe it wasn't a weird this or that.
Yeah, we had a term for that. I don't remember what class that I took, one of my science-y classes, but there's an actual term for that. I don't remember what it is, but it's like that specific concept, like when the quote unquote skeptical explanation can have to have so many things stacked up to the point that it almost becomes like by virtue of Occam's razor less reasonable than like maybe something weird, you know? Yeah. There's a name, but
Or-
I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
Or the easiest answer. Maybe they're making it up. Maybe they're telling a big fat lie. I'm not saying you, Fraser,
Oh,
but
it's always possible.
It's possible.
I mean that's the simplest answer, to be honest. Unless it's been seen by the person questioning, then that's the simplest answer. Jeff.
Oh,
Not that
Yeah.
I
that the
don't know.
thing happened.
like
It's
I
that they're
wouldn't
full of
go
shit.
into that's such disconnect of just so because like when it comes down to the point that it looks like you can genuinely see the fear in someone's face, and and here's another thing that like I tend not to try to accuse anybody of lying in any kind of situation. I think I genuinely believe that person has genuinely had an experience and they believe they've had an experience, and I'm not going to dissuade anyone. And I've taken this from a YouTuber I used to watch who was
That's a good point.
very much a skeptic, but tried to develop another way of thinking about it that is not as negative or dismissive.
That's a good point. I mean,
And
their experience could have
they
very much
had
happened to
an
them
event because they believe
themselves.
that
Yeah.
they had an event.
Yeah.
Whether or
Right.
not it's
They-
real, is an entirely different conversation. But it's for them to try to figure out for themselves whether it's not it's real, and to yeah.
I'll
One of
give
the
you.
things, and I think goes with just accusing everybody of lying is, and this is going to go on a tangent, and I'm really sorry to the viewers here. This is going to be a very tangent. I've had back pain for the last 4 and some odd years. Ever since 2019, I've had back pain because I went to bed one day. I just I was not sleeping for like the last few days because I was so uncomfortable and I was just struggling to just fall asleep. So I took everything and anything that I could just to just knock my ass out. Weed, melatonin. You know, going to bed early. Making myself comfortable, drinking chamomile tea with honey, that sort of thing. I hurt my back because I ended up falling asleep in a terrible position that fucked my back up.
Mhm.
And I tried to go to every single clinic that I could, like majority of clinics, and they said they could not see anything wrong with me. They couldn't find anything that was wrong with me. And I got to the point where my ex-roommate turned around and said, "I think you're a hypochondriac."
Yeah.
Even though I was visibly limping and struggling to walk and struggling to stand for long periods of time, and I was clearly conveying and displaying that I was having physical issues, people would rather accuse me of lying or doing this for attention rather than just, "Hey, I've got pain. I don't want to be in pain. Okay, fine, whatever it is. Can you make the pain stop?" It's like, "No, because you're probably going to use those drugs to get high."
Yeah.
I want the pain to stop. I don't want to get high. I can get high on my own without it. I don't need the painkillers to get high. I got weed, I got alcohol, I got stuff that's legal that can get me high. I just want the pain to stop. Sir,
Yeah.
please.
So basically, what you faced was like people
Yeah.
just disbelieving at a ridiculous sort of degree or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do think it does happen that like sometimes, yeah, like they could be lying, but at the same time, I don't think that's always the case. And like to dismiss everything like that as lying is like at some point it gets ridiculous.
I have a brief anecdote on that line, Cheb, that we've been going down for the past couple minutes.
Hmm.
This is, to me, this is about like loading, loading, like
Thoughts in your head.
we're what we're kind of discussing here is like okay, so it's kind of like there's no true objectivity. This is kind of a philosophical idea. It's like there's no true objectivity. So if you take two parties, one say a vested skeptic and one a person who had an experience, or taking it in hitting the ball in the Ramble's court here, like a patient and a doctor that doesn't have a satisfactory explanation for a patient's symptoms, right? So these two parties are looking at each other and they're psychologically projecting things onto each other based on their own beliefs. We try our best to be objective on our best days, but like you can't separate that, like we bring a part of ourselves into what we're observing. So a hardcore skeptic may be so entrenched in that position that they may be ascribing motives to people making claims that are not present, like Ramble's doctors being like, "You're just looking for drugs" or whatever like that, right? So, so in addition, it's like in skeptical inquiry, we try to be quote unquote objective, but it's interesting that sometimes those that may be too eager to believe every ghost story or every Bigfoot claim or whatever, you know, people can, for their own reasons, have a vested emotional interest in wanting to discredit claims as well. And I'm not making some critique. I'm just saying it's interesting how people respond to different phenomena. And I'll give one anecdote about that that's always been interesting to me. So I have two potential UFO experiences in my life, and I think it was the same thing that we saw in the same region of the country both times. I'm more inclined to think that it was some kind of like military diving thing or some military test thing, like some Air Force thing, you know? But it was really weird what we saw. So I'll just tell it quick, and I won't tell the second one. But basically, like, I was on the beach in North Carolina at a like a quiet beach, and I was with like 4 friends, and what we saw was way out in the water over the ocean. You just never seen anything like that. We saw like 5 orange like softball size looking lights, just spheres, just in the same place, static, non-moving, and they came on like one by one, and they stayed in the same formation, and they just fucking stayed there, and then they would go out, and then some would come on and some would turn off, and then they'd all come on at once, and then they just all turned off, and it didn't happen again. And it was just this kind of weird fucking light show thing. And it was really creepy. They were way too big, way bigger than... It was just freaky, and it upset all of us, because we'd never seen anything like that. We couldn't explain it. And, you know, none of us were just like, we saw the alien grays, it's the reptoids, call the Pentagon. You know, like, none of us really had a huge vested interest in being like, it was aliens, you know, like Giorgio Tsoukalos and Ancient, like, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Yeah. Nobody was really doing that. Like, me and my good friend, we were just kind of like marveling in the fact that we had this unexplainable experience, and like, it was scary, but we were like, what was it? Whoa, we all saw it. Here's the thing, this couple that was there, it fucking, like, we all sat there for like the 3 minutes when it occurred, and we watched it and talked about it. And all of a sudden, something happened to this couple. They like snapped or some shit. And after it was over, they wouldn't talk about it. They just started basically lying and saying that we didn't see anything and nothing was wrong and nothing happened. And the one guy, Bill, he was just like, "This is fucking boring anyway, man. This shit's stupid. I'm fucking bored out on this beach. There's nothing to you know, I'm going in. We're going inside. Come on, Jill, let's go. We're fucking going." Just like pieced out in like this confused rage. And me and the other kid were like, did they just like snap? And like they wouldn't talk about it again. I'm like, you know, we all just saw the lights. We didn't see shit. We didn't see shit. I'm fucking bored. Getting out of here.
That's when you know, you don't want to be the side of the nerds that you make fun of. That's what it was. He probably made fun of a lot of people who had those experiences.
Like, I don't want to be too hard on the dude and the chick, but it was just so funny because they sat there panicking about it while we were all observing it and discussing it. And then it was like, once the temperature cooled, they just hardened into this, like, I refuse to talk about that ever again, and I didn't see anything. Let's leave. Like, that was really interesting to me.
Yeah,
So it just upset them so badly that they just, I don't know what.
That's definitely a strange behavior.
really,
It was a strange behavior. It was just.
Have you guys ever heard of a semaphore?
What?
A what before?
A semaphore?
A semaphore. I'm not sure.
A semaphore is it's a way to tell way to transmit messages over long distances by flashing lights.
Yeah, it could have been that. Some kind.
Yeah.
There's
Or
more
both.
often than not, it's something relatively mundane, right?
Almost always. But when you started telling me about the flashing lights, I'm like, oh, it sounds like a semaphore tower. But I don't know.
No, it
could've been
wasn't a
something.
tower, right? So it was out. It was out over the ocean, like way out into the Atlantic Ocean.
No, I just meant they don't always use. I'm just saying they don't always use. Uh, they use flashing lights to communicate with each other sometimes. They
Right.
could have been doing something like that. That's all.
Right. It was just, it was, they were so big. I've never seen anything like that, and the motion was so strange. Like, if you'd been there, it was just like, what is that? And again, like, I'm inclined to believe it was like some kind of military thing, but other people in that area now have seen that phenomenon, and they've asked the Air Force, and the Air Force, like, won't talk about it. So, like, whatever it is, you know. But at the time we experienced it, like, we'd never seen anything like that. So functionally, to us, it was something we didn't understand. But it was just so funny that the guy and the girl, like, they just couldn't handle it, you know, to the point that
Yeah.
they were comfortable just like fabricating a new reality through their teeth to the very people they'd been talking about this with the strange lights for like the past 5 minutes. It's very odd, you know.
It's
Yeah,
fun
it
you ask them, hey, how's Ingrid Cole from the Men in Black? You know, he's a nice guy. Tell him I said hi.
With the men in, go. The men in black.
It was a weather balloon. It was a goddamn weather balloon. You hear me? Nothing less, nothing more. Now let's move on.
Swamp gas from Venus, and it reflected off of that guy's ass. And
Yeah.
All right, let's hear the next
Indeed.
ghost story, the next freaky one.
Who has one? Me?
I could
Mine?
go into one of mine if you want.
You go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right.
In more detail, since I did it very briefly. So, in the house that I lived in when I was a teenager, the one that was infested by cockroaches, it's another story. But yeah, my dad.
You were getting high on cockroach farts and hallucinating. All right, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I won't interrupt you anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, so my dad would sleep on the sofa bed because he snored too much, and my mum didn't want him sleeping in the main bed anymore. And yeah, and my dad is the loudest snorer ever, just so you know. Like it'll vibrate the walls and shit.
you
Anyway.
never met my dad, or me apparently.
Yeah. So my dad would always say that he'd get like woken up during the night to the sensation of someone like screaming and smashing the end of his bed and like making chaos in like the kitchen and stuff, like slamming, you know, the fucking drawers and cabinet doors and that kind of thing, and like clanking cutlery, just like mayhem in the kitchen. But he'd always wake up and there'd be like nothing. Like,
Did
just
your
a-
mom have anger issues?
Well, yes, but okay, it wasn't my mom, I'll tell you that much. It was like, you know, he'd wake up and it would be like dead still of night, like nothing going on. But he'd like definitely feel like someone like picking up the end of the bed and like slamming it on the floor and like yelling and just like that kind of thing. Like just weird stuff like that. And yeah, and then in that same house, my mum, not my mum, I would like sometimes wake up at night to the sensation of like someone like tapping my face or whatever. So that's the two weird things in that particular house that I can't really just explain. It's kind of weird. Could be
As-
completely rational, you know.
I wanna dislodge this. I'm gonna be an asshole again and say I lived with somebody who had horrendous sleep apnea. And it was because this guy's diet had consisted of eating nothing but McDonald's chicken nuggets and Coca-Cola. That's
That's
what
gotta
his
be
diet
good for you.
never deviated.
Can I
at
say
all.
one thing, Rambles? He does have
Yeah.
sleep apnea. He was diagnosed with that, so that could be a contributor to these crazy dreams.
This guy would actually, I had an experience where like his sleep apnea got so bad that it was literally vibrating the wall. His bedroom was right next to mine, and it was vibrating the wall
shit.
to the point where I was starting to wake up at random points in the night, and like go back to sleep, and it got to the point where I finally realized, oh wait, that's snoring that I'm hearing. That's what's waking me up. And then this went on for months, and I realized that I was no longer sleeping anymore, And when you go without sleep for long periods of time, you tend to go extremely psychotic. Like,
Yeah, you know,
extreme psychosis.
that's a possible explanation. I'm gonna say that that makes a lot of sense. It could be something like that because my dad does have sleep apnea. And so, like, he could have been waking himself up, right?
Yeah.
Because I've
Because like
had
it
that
almost sounds like
happen.
somebody was having an episode in the middle of the night just because of lack of sleep. Because
I
there was a point where it got to a point where I had rose myself out of bed, you know, while half asleep. I was not even aware of it at the time. I walked into his room and stood over his bed. And he apparently woke up during this, and that's when I woke up as well, and it scared the shit out of him.
Yeah, that would scare the shit out of me too. Holy fuck.
Goddamn paranormal activity ass shit in this bitch.
Oh, to make it even worse, I was also naked because I slept in the nude. I still
Bow,
sleep.
bow.
Christ.
Yeah. It's like all this like naked Samara looking bitch just standing in front of his bed, just like, you know, like ah! It's either I'm gonna beat the shit out of him or I'm going to rape him. One or the other is gonna happen.
Jesus Christ.
Like anything could be going through this guy's head. So yeah, and I think it was about a week after that he finally stopped snoring.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
from what I take away from this is that there's like perfectly rational explanations to his experiences in that house.
Yeah.
Like, it could be explained away.
And yeah,
Like, in my house,
I want
I
to
mean.
actually share an experience that I had. It's not necessarily an experience with ghosts, but it was weird to me in that I can't really place it. This is something that actually happened at my high school. Well, one of them anyway. And it's one of these things where for the longest time I just attributed it to having like an overactive imagination, but like thinking about it now, it was a lot of really, really weird shit. But yeah, yeah, mind if I go on this tangent, or you know, did you want to?
How off topic is it, and how long is it?
No, it has to do with like it doesn't have much to do with ghosts, but it has to do with the paranormal,
Okay. Yep.
and to an extent, in more of a surreal sense.
I think it's okay.
It actually has more to do with cult shit.
Okay.
Um,
Just don't take
Specifically
too long,
like
right?
sort of generalized satanic cult bullshit.
Okay.
When I was in high school, in around grade 10, grade 11, one of my friends and his group, we just decided just offhand, like, hey, let's make our own cult. You know, we kind of like this dark shit anyway, and there's no extracurricular after school's activities we want to do, so fuck it, we'll just do our own thing. You know, so we made our own cult. You know, it wasn't necessarily dedicated satanic shit, but we did do a lot of satanic bullshit. Like a lot of fucked up shit did happen. I won't bring up like anything wholesome we didn't do that we did do or whatever, but yeah. Weird shit did actually start happening to some degree. And I don't know if it was just sort of the collective enthusiasm of we were getting so into what we were doing that it was sort of affecting our own realities to some
How
degree.
old were you guys, by the way?
I was 16 going on 17.
Okay.
My friend Mortimer, who ended up becoming my fiance like a few years later and then dying. Fucking he was 15, 16. And everybody else was 16, 17, and Zach was 18 at the time.
Gotcha.
Like, cause he was the only adult in the group who got us alcohol. So, yeah, we were drinking underage. So, but yeah, we were fucking around with like a lot of weird stuff.
Was it Ouija boards?
Oh, it went beyond a Ouija boards.
Did somebody buy the Satanic Bible?
No.
Okay, just curious because we had people in high school, they would get that and start doing
Satanic
weird
Bible
shit.
wasn't real, because
Yeah,
like the
I know.
MMA shit was stupid.
But
It was like all
people would.
atheistic stuff, so we
Yeah.
put that away. Mortimer still kept it, but like
I was just curious because people would get that in high school and then they would say all this paranormal shit would start happening to them and they got very unhappy. That's
No,
just
no,
fun.
that
But
was-
anyway, so go on.
what happened was Jeffrey and another kid who we called Little Man because his name was also Jeffrey. they both you know, they were getting really heavy into magic, like actual legitimate like magic and stuff.
Like Western occultism, like
Uh,
ritual and
both
stuff.
Western and Eastern
I studied
stuff.
that stuff when I was a kid.
One of the things we found, and when they did more digging on like how to do legitimate magic and also legitimate summoning, because we were both obsessed with demons at the time, we really wanted. We were stupid kids that thought that we could summon a demon and make it our friend.
Did you
Oh,
buy the
wow.
Ars Goetia?
Oh no,
Okay, go
we
on.
managed
I'll
to
stop.
acquire through the internet, because back then the internet was the Wild West. You could find anything. Um, we found a copy on the internet in like I think it was like a PDF format. We found the entire Lesser Key of King Solomon.
Oh yeah, that's the Goetia.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's.
that's the ghost.
With all the like the sigils and stuff of all the
Yo, yo,
demons,
yo.
the princes of hell, and
And
their
that book is
principalities.
awesome. That book is awesome.
Yeah, that
I
shit's
love it.
wild.
I love looking at that
Yeah,
stuff.
but we were getting down into stuff. I think the demons we tried to summon, like one of the big ones that I really wanted to summon because he just sounded so like awesome and so cool. I wanted to summon Beelzebub. Um, fucking Mortimer on the other hand wanted to summon Asmodee or Asmodeus or Asmodeus, and the other ones wanted to summon Balthagars for a really weird reason because they actually had a justifiable reason.
Damn.
Mortimer wanted to summon Asmodeus because he was horny, and Asmodee was the patron of sex.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Fucking the other guys wanted to summon Balthagar because they thought that he could give them free lunches.
You know, I'm not religious or anything, but
Yeah.
this is the kind of shit that I wouldn't, like, touch with a barge pole just because I don't want to tempt anything.
Yeah.
I'm, like, freaked out by that kind of thing.
I was the only one who didn't have a real reason for why they wanted to summon Beelzebub. I was just like because the cool man is red. I don't give a fuck. His name was actually cool. That's why, because back that point I used to be a fan of the Tamer saga of Digimon, and
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub was my favorite character. And so like
I like
maybe
Beelzebub.
it's the same. Maybe it's the same as that.
We're not Digimon, little girl. We're princes of hell. Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
like
what happened? So you did these things, and then what happened that was unusual?
We found something. I don't remember what it was, but one day this was actually during school, during our spare. We all went out to this courtyard that wasn't necessarily on the school property. It was like this weird breezeway that had like rusty railings and cracked pavement that was not maintained at all. That was just sitting right just outside of the school zone, but nobody gave a shit because it was one of the only smoking areas you could go. So we decided to effectively fuck around and find out. We had brought our sage and our charcoal with us, and we used the charcoal to basically copy this one specific sigil we found in the Lesser Key of King Solomon. And the only thing I remember it was a sigil for summoning or connecting or evoking Golgotha. I had never looked up what Golgotha was back then. I vaguely remember what it was now. I think it's like a putrefaction demon or something. We decided to just fuck around and find out. We didn't bring candles with us, but we tried to recite the phrases as best we could and sort of do our best. You know, we tried being polite and stuff and said like, "Oh, we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna do it that way." You know, this is how we're gonna do it, and this is how it's gonna go about. And we went through it, and everything got weird. All the wind stopped. The traffic stopped as well. Like the cars stopped passing. Everything just stopped. That's all I can describe it. Everything was just eerily quiet. We were all kind of looking at each other, trying like to just, you know, like, oh, this isn't so bad, you know. This is totally fine. Nothing's wrong with this. You know, everything is fine.
That is freaky, man.
Though it gets freakier. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something black flicking out from like some weeds or some tall grass that was like not maintained or whatever, just outside of like the railing. And it looked like a tail of a snake was just sort of whipping out from the brush and sort of withdrawing. And like periodically we'd see them around the tarmac and we'd just be looking at each other. And I think the first thing I did was I looked up at Zach, who was like the oldest one there, and said, "You want to bail?" And it's like, "Yeah, let's bail." And then they they tried to smudge out the sigil as best they can, and then we just sort of ran back inside the school. The weirdest part was, this is the more fucked up part, we thought we were out there for like 2 hours. When we went back into class, it was still our spare, and it only had been like 15 minutes.
Sounds like
So-
you guys got lucky.
We either think we had like a time warp, or like, we spent so much time being freaked out that it probably dilated the time for us, prospectively.
That just sounds like like what some people think about stuff like this, is that in the quote unquote, I'm not saying I necessarily believe this, but it's an interesting kind of like, I don't know, like metaphysical theory for all these things. It's like, imagine you have like almost like I haven't read too many Stephen King books, but almost like the cosmology, like the larger mythos in Stephen King, that they're like these worlds next to our worlds where like all the fucked up shit and the paranormal are, and like a lot of his dudes are like slipping into our reality in these eerie manifestations through this, like, what'd that senator say about the internet? Like a series of tubes, like this kind of idea. So like we have the real world, like our physical stable like vibration of dimension, and there like Bigfoot doesn't happen, UFOs don't happen, like ghosties don't occur, demons don't come, right? But like certain things can happen under certain circumstances, and then like especially in isolation where there's not a lot of other human beings necessarily there to like reinforce the stable vibration, you can like start to shift. So it's like you're in the physical world, but you're actually kind of shifting the immediate reality into these other places. So like you have like the expanded sense of time, and like the weather changes, and like these snake things, and then you're like, you snap out of it and you're like, oh, it's only been 15 minutes, okay, we're safe. So maybe it's like this kind of idea, right? You were like shifting into the fucked up dimensions that are like right beside ours, right?
We were in the weird world. We were in the weird dimension.
Right.
Yeah, fuck that.
It's like, I don't want to be in the weird world no more. I wanna go-
Yeah. Life is already pretty hard without dipping your toes into that crazy stuff. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to understand why people want the world to be so magical.
Because the world is fucked up, because at least if it's magical, you feel like you have more control. Like, if you can't stand your job, summon a new job or something like that. Or, if you need money, conjure more money, or conjure other things. The idea of magic feels like this free-form thing where anything feels possible in the world that feels restrictive and, constrained. We're constrained not just by the laws of reality. We're constrained by our jobs. We're constrained by society. We're constrained by a government that doesn't care about us but expects us all to pay taxes either way. And we're constrained by just these things. Like, we're constrained by our genders, our nationalities, our race. We're constrained by bullshit that we have no control over.
Alright, Grandpa.
Okay, but
All being boring humans, we're
our
still
turn.
like crap. Or
Our turn.
treating us if we're not good enough.
Ambos.
Yeah.
There's also very pretty things in this world.
What?
There's also very pretty things in this world.
Yeah,
And I wasn't. My turn. I'm just saying. I can understand on a little intellectual level. I can reason out. But I understand. But it is the more miserable of us, or the more
That's not really the point. But like, of
focus
course,
on.
there isn't pretty things. It's just when it boils down to it, you know, those flowers are really pretty. Those flowers are also really either really expensive or they're an invasive species.
Alright, I think I can summarize what Rambles is saying, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you cook a really nice bowl of bolognese, right? The best
Yeah.
bowl ever. It's really good. But if you take a big old lump of shit and stir that in, well then the whole thing ends up shit. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, like, and you go out of
Thought
your
so.
way to try and make the world a better place, and somebody has to shit all over it. You
Yeah,
know?
well, fuck all
Yeah.
of that, I say. Let's talk about the ghosts again.
Yeah.
Yee.
I think I kind of went full doomer on this. And I
Yeah.
apologize to anybody listening to me going
Also-
to doomer rant.
Also, I feel a bit marginalized because there are those among us who like eating shit, okay? And I will not be marginalized.
True, we recently watched a documentary about a certain Austrian woman, but let's not go there.
Well, just to burst all your
trying to-
bubbles,
Levity.
two girls, one cup. 2 girls, 1 cup is fake.
Yeah,
Oh.
of course it's fake.
Well, I'll tell you what, that Austrian woman is not fake.
Legitimately do like eating poop. And
All right, I just
if
tried to add a moment of levity. We can move on from the
you know
coprophagia.
exactly what I mean.
I wish the Austrian woman was fake, but no, she's deadly real.
But yes, just so to bring it all around, sidehammer to what you said about people wanting things to be magical. Yeah, I think I'm guessing what you mean is not just magical, but just different in general. And it reminds me of this conversation I had with someone who hadn't experienced anything unusual, but like she desperately wanted to, like watched all the ghosty alien shows, all that jazz, and she'd always be talking about it, but never had any experiences herself. And I remember because I've had these weird experiences, but I'm not necessarily like vested in like going on a crusade to be like it's this and this is the explanation, and I'm just not like that. And I said to her, I was like, well, the thing is, like, everybody wants to see something or have something happen, but it's frequently the case that if you do see or experience something that you can't explain, you don't always really like it. Sometimes you wish that it never happened at all.
Yeah.
I think she kind of got that. So I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, but it made me think of it.
Yeah. I just had a thought just now, though, of
No, totally, I get you. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Go for it.
like I don't think it really matters if the world is magical or not, because I think we'd still have the same problems. Like who cares if we have orcs, dwarves, and dragons in the real world? Because at the end of the day, like we'd still have the same problems.
Yeah.
Because then it just, instead of like, this marginalized, group of people getting victimized, it's gonna just be, oh, the orcs are getting victimized again. Or like, we're gonna
Yeah.
have goblin lives matter.
Hang on, Rambles. I'm just gonna stop you right there because I don't want to get into all that crazy political stuff.
Yeah.
So, you've got a few more creepy stories, right? Fridge?
Let me think. I probably do. I'm trying to think of what they are. If I can think of one. Oh, here's one. This one was disquieting, but it's just a simple one, so I'll tell it quickly. Like, so there was this one day I was like, oh, we'd gone back to the house while we still owned it. So I was like, 15, 16. I was, ready to sow my wild oats and whatnot. And I remember my sisters were home at the time too, from wherever they were, school or whatever, and my older sisters. And so I had chosen this time where my parents were out of the house and my sisters were out of the house to like have this chick over that I used to know to try and, get a little something to happen. And it was going largely successfully. But then we were walking through the house and I was underneath my sister's bedroom and I heard footsteps. We both heard footsteps and I freaked out because like I wasn't supposed to have this girl over here. Plus, like if my family was home, that was just going to throw a big monkey wrench in the whole works, right? So I like freeze and I'm like, oh fuck, hold on. I'm just going to go up there and check. I didn't hear anyone come in, but we might not be alone. So I go up there and like I just get this chill feeling and all the lights are off in my sister's room and there's nobody there. There was nobody above us at all. The whole house was empty, but there were like footsteps right above us in my sister's room when we were in that fucked up guest room. So, I just
man.
hated it, man. Getting cock blocked by a ghost is no picnic, let me tell you.
That does suck. One time I was up on a upper floor in a house and I heard this like crazy sound in the house. And it freaked me out. But it turned out it was actually just snow like sliding off the roof. But it sounded like so totally inside the house, and the reason why I figured out that it was snow was because as I was investigating, it happened again and I saw snow like falling off through the window. I was like, aha, that's what the creepy sound was.
Isn't that always nice when you like you get this huge terrible rush of adrenaline, whether it's like you think it's a ghost or like you think a dude's breaking into your house and you get all jacked up, you know, and then you're like, oh, it's just that thing that fell over. Oh man, fuck.
Yeah.
It's a relieving feeling. But we had a push ghost too, like you talked about, Cheb, like the bed shaking, getting tapped and pushed. We had this one room, this one bed, and like nobody would. So right outside it, when you'd be outside the room, everybody. It was so common if it were nighttime there, for people to be like, ah. I'm suddenly getting this terrible, crippling panic attack feeling, like right outside the room. I just don't. I feel uneasy. No, 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 no. And my friend was over one time, and I didn't see this, but he said he saw like a person standing like on the balcony outside the entrance to this room. So it was just like very common for people to feel uneasy. Oh, I've got a maybe for another time. I lived in a haunted apartment. Those are my really bad ghost stories. They must have repressed them. But
Can we hear about it today? I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
if you want, yeah.
Okay.
But briefly, then this push ghost was in that room. You could never get a good night's sleep in that bed. You'd wake up, something would happen, but all the time when someone would be falling asleep there, they would feel like someone either got into the bed with them or someone kept pushing them in the back or like pulling their hair or tapping at their face. Nobody fucking liked that place, and it just got worse. Like I was in there one time and like I heard like this gets into like those weirdo people on those ghost shows that think there's demons and stuff. Like I heard like slurping, sucking sounds near my ear when I was in there at night one time. And sometimes you'd walk in there and your hair would stand up, like you'd just get bad vibes in your skin. I heard this slurping sound, and then my mom started to talk about it too later, and I had to like pull this out of her, and I was like, what happened? And she had the same thing when she was near the room. She like heard like this slurping thing like next to her ear. And people kept being like, "Oh, I think there's something wrong with that room." No, no, no. And just so many things happened, right? And she like didn't want to admit it to me, and I was like, "Okay, maybe something, something." So it got bad enough, and she wouldn't tell me everything, but she was like, "You know what they say about that smudging? Like, I don't want to even admit this, but maybe we should smudge the room." So actually, my mom and I ended up going in there, and we got one of those little sage things from somewhere, and we just like burned it, and then we like prayed together, and we like opened the windows, and we like cleaned the. We didn't tell anybody. We were just like, it was almost like we both didn't want to admit that we were buying into it that much, and like feeling badly enough that we wanted to like try and spiritually uplift this room, but we're just like, let's just do it and get it over with. And we prayed together, and we like held hands, and we opened these windows, and we just like spontaneously asked like anything that's in there, you can just like leave, and it's okay, and like go to the light and whatever. And I got all warm, and like all my hair stood up and stuff. It's a strange feeling. And we just like quietly prayed and said amen and everything, and just ended it. And uh, yeah, suffice it to say, nobody got like push ghosted in the room again, and we didn't hear any more sucking sounds. So I don't know if that's just a one-off, or we like let some condensed energy blob that shouldn't have been there get out of there. But that's my little amateur exorcism smudging story. So
It's very
it really
interesting.
sucked though to have all these friends come to your house and be like, something is pulling my hair and pushing me, and I can't go to sleep.
Yeah, you could get in trouble for that.
Yeah, I'll be like, yeah, if they open their eyes and see me like rambles standing naked at the foot of the bed, then I could really get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
To be fair, I was pretty much near sleepwalking at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always put a big white sheet over myself when I pull friends' hair when they stay at my house. So gotta be confidential.
Yeah.
So that's my push ghost, Chad. So no apnea, there. Just a weird push ghost.
Yeah. Well, when
Oh,
it's corroborated by others, then it can't be apnea, right? Unless everyone's got it.
That's what bothered me about it. For one thing, is that like my sister claimed that it happened. Tons of my friends claimed that it happened. A girlfriend that stayed there claimed that it happened. Like my mom and I heard these sounds. Like everyone felt anxious there. My friend saw a figure standing there. It just was not good, you know. And it kept happening. And we were like, okay, what is this? So.
that was fun.
So, what about the other freaky story then?
Yeah, that shit sucked, man. I lived in this apartment in like a really old building in like an old city, and when I moved into it, like my family came and visited, and like nobody liked it. They just like said that it like gave them bad vibes and like the angles were off and and it was kind of a weird layout, but they just thought that it was weird. And I remember like there was just something wrong with the bathroom, so I stayed in there for a year, and this like stuff just unfurled like through the year. Having the ghosty experience that I have, like I remember when I got in there, I like I could someone else take the floor? I need to go get some water. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be back shortly.
Excellent. Yeah.
So, how about we ask the skeptic, what do you think about the whole thing where it's corroborated by other people? So it can't be like a sleep apnea case. Are they all lying, or are they're all suffering from the gas leak, or what do you think's happening?
Both of those could be true. Sometimes people believe what they say, and it's true to them, like Rambles was saying. Sometimes people want to fit in, and they agree to agree. I mean, herd mentality is a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, some people just want to be part of the crowd. Some people want magic to be real. They want it to have been real, and they convince themselves that it was. You know, there's a lot of things can happen. The human brain is very complicated. But I am not an expert.
Yeah.
No, I'm not an expert. Skeptic. You know? And to be honest, if someone had showed me proof of stuff, I'd fucking believe in ghosts. Because
Yeah.
I'd have seen it. But
Like
I haven't.
So,
I've called my stuff into question too, as well. So, like, because I never corroborated with the group if I saw things, but their eyes were darting around the same. So maybe, but we never brought it up again after that. So
yeah. Do you really think, Sidehammer, that there's like nothing that's ever happened to you that's been like unexplainable? Like you were able to rationalize everything?
I've had hella coincidences in my life before. I've had a string of terrible events happen.
Right.
I've never attributed it to, you know, the dark arts. You know, I was much more gullible as a child. I definitely thought of that stuff when I was younger.
Yeah.
You know, I studied Wicca as I was younger, but it was in studying Wicca when I realized that, or kind of came to the realization that all religions were bullshit. At least that's my realization.
Yeah.
I was reading a book on chaos magic, and the way it was being talked to me, I was like, wait, you could apply that to every single fucking thing I have ever heard of. Holy shit, all of this is just bullshit. Holy crap. So it's kind of like that to me. But
well, chaos magic is supposed to be like aware that it's bullshit, though. It's like,
anyways, I'm just saying.
Well, I've returned.
Anyways,
Okay.
I just it was just in reading about that at that point in my life, and I was, you know, intelligent enough to, you know, make the connections between, you know, psychological underpinnings that these foundations or these institutions were playing upon that, just kind of turned me off to the whole thing. So,
All right.
so
please
really,
continue.
no, I don't believe I have seen anything. I don't remember any unexplained or magical things that happened. And if I did, I was a kid then, and I have either forgotten them or dismissed them so far. And everything since has been just bad luck, anxiety, or just really bad night's sleep.
Okay. Okay, please continue, Mr. Fridge.
All right. What did I miss, by the way? What were you talking about, Sidehammer? In brief, church or something else, or?
Oh, they asked me if I had really had never had any weird thing
Okay.
happen to me, and I was
Gotcha.
just explaining how I used to study Wicca, and that had kind of turned me off the whole magical thing, to be honest.
Well, Wicca's-
Right. Yeah, I have a past with the Western occultism as well. But anyway,
I mean, I love reading about that shit. I read about all that stuff. I love it.
yeah,
But I go into it as it's fiction,
right.
even though the people who might have written it,
fun historically.
or fun historically.
Yeah,
But I don't put any stock into it, unfortunately.
gotcha.
Please, the floor is yours.
Alrighty. So yeah, this apartment, man, this place was jacked up, but like, I was like, I signed this lease, and I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do? Like, and plus, like, okay, I might be cart before the horsing here. When I first got in there, in the first few days, oh, like having had ghosty experience, I feel like I have ghosty intuition. And I know I told this story to you the other day, Cheb, but just for reference, for the Paranormal podcast, like, I was dating a girl and went to stay in her house, and first time I was in that house, and it was getting late, and I just asked her, like, by the way, I'm getting some odd vibes. Do you ever, like, anybody die in here? You ever have any experience? And she was like, oh, well, we bought the house from our friend, and you're standing directly next to his ashes, and they're right there in that glass cabinet. I was like, I look, there's this dead dude's cremains, like, in this cabinet, right? So I just picked up on these vibes. Anyway, I say that to say this. The first 2 or 3 days I was in there, I just started to be like, that sound that Marge Simpson makes when she's quietly disapproving of something? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, I just started to feel like that, and I was like, is Ghosty presence? Did move into bad vibe apartment? Oh no, So I sat down, and this might have been after the first bathroom incident happened. But I think it was after the first bathroom incident happened, which I'll say in a moment. But basically, having gotten this bad vibe, I just like sat down in the apartment, as I frequently do now if I get a weird vibe, and I just prayed, and I was like, I'm here, like, if you're here, if there's something here, like, we're both gonna be here, and I don't mean you any whatever, like, I hope you can be at peace, la la la. So that's what I do. I go full Stockholm syndrome on the ghosts. I'm like, now you don't want to harass me. We're on the same team here, buddy, right?
Yeah.
So I do my little spiritual prayer. Anyway, that was after the first bathroom incident. So the bathroom there, these old doors, right? There was like a lock on the bathroom door. And one day I was using the bathroom on like the 4th or 5th day I got into the apartment. And I tried to get out, and I hadn't locked the door, because why would I? I lived as a one person in a studio apartment, and the door had locked itself somehow, and it also wouldn't unlock. So I was locked in this tiny ass claustrophobic bathroom.
Shit.
And there were bars on the window. So if something caught on fire, I was gonna die, right? And it was not fun, and I'm just sitting there trying to reason how to get out. The bars face this inner courtyard of buildings. It was like a 2nd or 3rd story or something. I had to yell out these bars to get somebody across the court in another building to get my building superintendent. And so he has to come and bail me out, but right before he got in, I actually had the bright idea. You know those Swiffer duster things?
No.
It's like a multi-part
Sure.
floor mop thing that assembles.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what they are. Eh,
Swiffer, swipper, whipper, upper,
yeah,
fountain.
that's it. Yeah, and they're assembled in multi-unit cylinders, and so I unscrewed it and took like the male bit of one of them and jimmied the door open. Like I fucking physically crowbarred the door, and
Wow,
like
nice one.
splintered the door frame. Yeah, yeah, like 15 minutes had gone by, and now my rational brain's going and starting to go into a mild panic. Like, yeah, I'm gonna die. Like if this catches on fire. So I like ripped the door out of the jam. Then the
Shit.
super comes in and he's like, "Oh, oh my God, no, what happened? You need to tell me what happened." He freaks out because he thinks he's gonna get sued. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. I just got locked in the bathroom by a fucking bathroom ghost. Okay, no skepticism here. All right, it's a bathroom ghost. Okay, so over the year, you know, I'm in school and like people would come over, friends would come over, little weed addict friends, and they'd all want to smoke weed in the bathroom and do their thing. And everybody hated that bathroom. Like it was small, but people would just get bad vibes in it, and especially the stoners, they would just be like, "I'm always so chill, and when I smoke in there, I just feel like something's there. I just don't like it. It's too small." Like everyone universally hated it. So then one day, like my friend and I, he stays the night at my house. Um, he stays the night at my house, and we're sleeping, going to sleep in my bedroom, one room studio deal. And I'm in between asleep and awake. And this is so long ago. How do I tell this so it's remotely effective? All of a sudden, I hear this woman's voice, like speaking in a foreign language that sounded something like German or something, and I couldn't understand it. And it sounds like it's like by my ear and also through the wall, like in the wall or something. And like I'm in my bed on one side, and my friend Michael is on my futon couch sleeper on the other side of the room, and we're in the dark. And I'm like fighting my way out of what I think is in between asleep and awake. And then my brain comes online enough, and I'm like, oh, am I dreaming? I'm having some hypnagogic hallucination. I come fully awake, and the woman's voice is still there, like in the room. And all of a sudden, like I gasp, and simultaneously, me and the other guy like gasp, and you can hear our ragged breathing, and we both sit bolt upright in the room at the same time. And I hear and see him snap his body up, just like I did. And he's like 6'4", so it's like a big reaction. And we're just sitting there, and I hear his ragged breathing with mine in the room. He's like, and he's like, his head's moving around.
Shit. Creepy.
Yeah. And I go, like 10 seconds pass, neither of us are talking, and it was in basically another UFO beach situation. And I'm like, Michael? And he's like, yeah. Did you just wake up? And he's like, oh. There's a long silence. He's like, something woke me up. Yeah, something woke me up. But I was like, okay, Michael, did you hear like a voice by any chance? And there's like a 10-second silence, and he's just hyperventilating. He's like, I didn't hear anything. I think I just woke up. I'm gonna go back to bed. I'm going back to bed.
Gee whiz, man.
It was awful. But what do you think about that? There's one more thing that happened that was the worst thing. What do you think about that one, though?
I think it's freaky.
Yeah, it was not any fun. So I had to continue living there
Freaky
by
covers
myself.
it.
Yeah, freaky, absolutely freaky. And oh, I had a fucking friend get like possessed there too. He started acting way out of character, and that was just not fun. Maybe I won't tell that one. But like it's not R TVMA rated, but it would just take more time, and it's not very fun. But here's the weirdest thing. Okay, so here was an actual basically like essentially some kind of poltergeist activity. I had a friend, my friend April, came over and chilled with me that day, and we spent like 2.5 hours talking, playing music, eating, drinking, not substances or alcohol, and just doing our thing in the main studio room. And then out the studio room, you'd go down this janky hallway that the galley kitchen was on, and then I would drive, but I'm not screen sharing right now, this hallway, and at the end of the hallway was the closet, it was a walk-in closet which was open with no door, and what was covering it was a curtain, okay? And to the right was the bathroom that I got locked in. So you go out the big studio room, walk down the hallway, galley kitchen on the right, bathroom on the right, end of the hallway, walk-in closet covered by a curtain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you'd open that, you would hear the curtain go as the metal rings go across. Very thin, right? I can hear everything. And in there I kept a bunch of shit, and I had a chair in there that I would use only sometimes when I would have people come over to play music, or I'd have more than one guest. Anyway, April and I are chilling multiple times. We go out and go into the bathroom to pee or whatever and come back into the room. The third time April goes out to pee, she comes right back after like 15 seconds. And she has this terrible look on her face, and she's all pale. And she's virtually like having a panic attack. And she's interrogating me to replay what we had done in the last hour, and who had gone into the hallway when, and who had gone into the bathroom when. Because I had only used it like once, and she'd been in there 3 times because she drank a shitload of coffee. And she's trying to like get me to say, no, there was an extra time that I went out into the bathroom. Like, April, no, I peed once and the rest was all you. And at this point, it's getting freaky. Like, you feel like someone's grilling you and you don't know why. So I'm like, April, you don't look right. You seem very afraid. Like, would you just fess up and tell me what's going on? And she's just like, just come out here. Just come out here. I'm getting chills just thinking about this now, remembering this.
Shit.
And I go out in the hallway, and the curtain is still closed on the walk-in, the open walk-in with the curtain over it. The curtain's closed, but the wooden chair, the bathroom door is open, and the wooden chair that I kept in the walk-in has been like dragged into the door jamb, and it's placed like right on the threshold of the door, like in the bathroom door jamb. Like if you were gonna hang yourself and kick the chair out from under yourself.
Shit.
Oh, that's
And
unsettling.
yeah, and we're just staring at it, and she's like, "You came out here. You moved it." I'm like, "You moved the chair," but like the curtains closed, and you would have heard it, and I could hear her walk through the thing, and like you would have definitely heard something. And she's like, "I just need to leave. I can't be here right now." I'm like, "April, we just." She's like, "No, I can't. I have to leave. I have to go." And she left, and she wouldn't come over to my apartment again.
Wow. Creepy, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
That's nuts.
So we think that like, oh, maybe it was a ghost, and like maybe somebody hanged themselves like in that fucked up bathroom that nobody ever liked, you know, where the chair moved under the door jamb, and like, so that was where I lived.
Yeah, that sounds freaky. I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, my overall stance on this entire paranormal ghost thing has not changed from this podcast. It's pretty much that, like, I don't necessarily like believe or disbelieve, but I would say there's some freaky shit out there that I don't understand, and that's about it. I hope it doesn't happen to me. But I'd love to hear about it. Find it fascinating, and thank you so much for sharing your creepy experiences, I guess.
You're welcome. I feel like I've been to confession. I feel like my soul has truly been cleansed on this day.
Dude, I'm kind of jealous that you've had this many experiences, honestly, because, like, aside from just, like, the fucking hamburger incident and, like, the fucking shit in high school, like, I've never had any serious, genuine experience, like, not to that magnitude. And, like, the thing in high school, I could easily explain that away as just overactive imagination, potentially, but yeah.
For real,
Yeah.
dude, you could be like protagonist or something.
Protagonist.
No, I tossed you into Supernatural or something. Yeah, that many.
Yeah,
That
what are
many.
your main character?
I said protagonist.
Maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. I really wish I honestly really wish I didn't have those experiences in that apartment. Like, I totally forgot, and you were like, "Do you have any more?" And I was like, "Oh, what the fuck am I thinking? That horrible apartment." Like, I must like regularly like block it out, because yeah, they really did happen to me, and I had to live there. And I remember each time something would happen, I would have to be like, "Okay, this is where you're sleeping tonight. Like, this is where you're gonna be alone tonight." So like after the chair thing, I remember I was like, okay, like let's just forget about this and go out to eat and take a walk. And like that's all I could do. So like it honestly kind of sucked. But you know, you can't reverse time and change anything. So I'll always remember seeing that chair though and just like the look on my friend's face. But yeah, thanks for allowing me to tell some of the stories.
You're welcome. Any closing statements before we wrap this up?
Oh, we never got into the Irish folklore ghosts, and
Oh, would you like to do that now then?
yeah, are you cool with that? Like, it might extend the episode a little bit longer, but yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, I'm cool as long as no
Think
one
I'll
else
have
is like.
I think I have to bow out. I think I'm gonna have to bow out for that.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
cool.
Okay,
Sorry
good to
about
see you,
that.
man.
Yeah, you too. Hope we
Hanging out.
talk to you next time.
Absolutely.
Have a good night. Have a good night, Rams.
Yeah, all right, I know. So yes, I'll make it very brief. I'll just talk about like the three main ones. There's the big one that everybody knows about, and then there's the two other ones that no one really knows about. Which would you guys like to hear first?
Well, I'm
The
not
one
sure I
nobody
know
knows
about.
about.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the Nuckelv.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this one I actually drew a picture of a while back without realizing what it was, because I had a dream about one, about this rotted soldier that got fused, that had his arms cut off and was fused to his horse effectively, and sort of this undead amalgamation. And I thought that was such a freaky image that I just had to draw it one day, and then I showed it to someone, and they turned around and said, "Holy shit, that's a Nuckelv! I didn't think you were that cultured." Wow. I was like, wait, Nuckel what? Nuckelv. And yeah, it's a specter from Irish folklore. Usually they appear on battlefields and all this other stuff, and they're also kind of designated to like guiding the dead, usually those that die in battle or of grievous wounds from battle or stuff like that. So yeah, if you're going on like Google Images or anything, look up the pictures of it. Some of the shit that they come up with is fucking horrifying, and it's just like whew.
Yeah,
Like-
I bought all those books by, if you know Brian Froud, the illustrator and humorist. He's British, and he worked with Jim Henson, like Dark Crystal puppetry and stuff. He had all those art books out about fairies over the years and goblins, and I had all of those. And one of his fairy books has like a lot of the British Isles folklore with writings and explanations, and he has the Nuclev in the book. I don't know if you've seen his books, but
I think yeah,
it's got all those Selkies and Redcap and Nuclev and all of it.
Oh yeah, but it's pretty interesting. Yeah. So the next one, we're gonna go to one of my favorites, the Delahan. The Delahan is interesting because its inspiration was actually it is a direct inspiration for the headless horseman from the old Salem myth. Unfortunately, it's a very much a bastardization of this horrifying, trying to make out this this figure as being horrifying or psychotic or psychopathic, because the Delahan is a headless horseman type character, but they're not evil at all. They're actually seen as do-gooders, believe it or not. They're if you're ever lost in the mire or lost along the road during the fall season or the season of autumn, when it's rainy and wet and cold, and it's the where the wild hunt begins sort of aspect, even though that's not even related to Irish culture. It's close, it's very unified, but it's said that if you're lost along these roads by yourself and you come upon a horseman with no head, or their head is sort of propped up in their hat, they will basically lead you back to civilization. And they are a soldier or something along those lines that did not make it to heaven because of the atrocities they caused, but they're not bad enough to get into hell. There's a lot of stories with that too. Like one of the biggest ones was the inspiration for Halloween is like that as well, Stingy Jack. But yeah, the Delahan will basically guide anybody to back to civilization or guide them home, and sometimes they'll give them riddles, and it's kind of a custom in a way. You can present them with like either beer or whiskey or wine or any drink you have. It's considered being respectful if you ever come across one. It's
That's
not a
one thing I
requirement.
find of
Yeah.
interest, the tales about helpful paranormal entities. Like in the woods, there's lots of like ones that guide weary travelers back home. Like I always find that interesting.
Like
Yeah.
I can see it as sort of the dad ghost, who like you can almost guarantee it. Like a Delahan would be like the ultimate dad ghost. They'd be making head puns the entire time. I was bringing up like, "Hey, glad I could get ahead of you, huh? So are you heading home, huh? Huh?"
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So and yeah, we need to see more Delahan positivity now, because that's such a bad representation. I'm gonna cut your head off. It's like, no, bitch, I'm gonna take you home. You've been
yeah,
drinking.
that's not uncommon for many like either pagan or just folklorish like entities to be recast in a kind of demonic or malevolent role over time.
Yeah. Wonder why that happens.
The same reason people see UFOs and then refuse to admit they saw them.
Yeah, dial
Sorry.
me back around.
Just bringing it back around, yeah.
This does actually segue to another one that's also misunderstood, but also it's misunderstood in a lot of ways, that it was not necessarily bad, but not necessarily good. And for this, I'm talking about the Banshees.
Mm.
The Banshee was seen as an old woman or old hag, often dressed in green, usually would hang out in the mire or the swamp. Not necessarily a witch, not necessarily a ghost, but sort of in between. Something that walks between the shade of life and death, so to speak. But they're notorious for apparently bringing death. It's a bit of a misconception in its own right, in that they tend to come to those people who are already dying. And it's said that if they call out 3 times, then your death is basically guaranteed. Usually those who are sickly or on their deathbed, if you hear them call 3 times, yeah, you're going, Auntie. I'm sorry. Sorry, don't look at me. It was the Banshee. No. You're not cutting me out of the will. Don't blame me. It's the Banshee. No one says what happens if she cries out 2 times. Is it something else? If it's 4 times, do you own a loan? Like, it could be very times. Like, it could vary. It's like it's 6 times. Like, honey, I think the cat's dead. It's like,
Yeah,
really?
7, you can save 15% or more on car insurance by switching to. Okay.
But yeah, the actual true origin that I found out recently, I don't remember where I saw this from. Maybe it was Wendigoon or one of the creepy YouTubers out there. It could have either been Wendigoon or Shrouded Hands. One of those had covered it, but the original origin of the Banshee stems from from its name specifically, stems from the term banshee or banshee, which is to cry or to wail. And back then, way back a long time ago, noble families, if they were concerned that they would not have enough mourners for their relatives passing, they would hire professional mourners. And the term banshee or banshee is correlated with these professional mourners. This was something that was also carried on in British tradition as well, and other traditions as well. We'll hire professional mourners. And I think now this is I might be pulling this out of my ass, but there were Italians who did the same thing, and there were a lot of it's considered a very Italian tradition to do this as well. I speculate was probably brought over because they had some settlements in Ireland back then.
They're also
Back then they used to call
both
them Black Irish.
they're also both Catholic, right? So maybe it's something to
Oh
do with
yeah,
that.
they were. That's partly where it all came from as well. Why you got all your Catholicism in Ireland now.
So there's always been some degree of connection between the banshee and death in whatever manifestation?
Of course, it's always in direct relation. Some correlations, and sometimes if you want to watch those old Disney movies about the leprechauns, it's just they like to choose it as sort of your classical Irish antagonist. Oh, don't go out night or the banshee will get you. It's like, I'm not dead yet. You might be. Okay, what's she gonna do? She can't cry unless I'm dying. I was like, what'd she do when you're not dying? What do you do in that case?
Oh, but she'll give you a most terrible fright.
Like, honey, 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 honey. There's a bakery shop over there. I just imagine it's just like this poor goth kid who just like wants to cry at every grave, and it's like, honey, honey, honey. Let's go to Starbucks and talk about it, huh? Like, let's go. There's the now and the past over there. Or no, look. There's a fucking brain work, please. Brain work, please. Fuck it. Name of the goth shop.
Strike.
Yeah. But yeah, I gotta go. We gotta end this episode. It was fun to be around, you guys. I had a hell of a time.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
was a good time exploring these themes.
Yeah. I love to
Yes.
talk about the freaky shit. Maybe next time we can talk about Bigfoot.
Absolutely. I'd be there for that.
Cool. Alright. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.
Bye.